Hey team, Ivan here. Just wanted to give some tips and tricks on how we can tighten or loosen our frames. And we're going to do it by either adding or eliminating what's called face form. And I'll explain that. And what we mean by tight or loose is really thinking about the temples, kind of sides of our head. Is it pressing on the sides of your head? Does it feel really loose on the sides of your head? And we're going to look at some tips and tricks on how to do that at home without all the special fancy tools, the fancy frame warmers, the different frame pliers. We're going to talk about doing it at home during quarantine. So, we're going to need a mug, some nice steaming hot water. You can either have it boiled, microwave. I got mine right out of a kind of hot and cold bubbler that we have here at home. Now we're using a hot water on a plastic frame. If we had a metal frame, we wouldn't have to do this. So we'll talk about both. So on this one, what we would use in store is we would use this alignment gauge, right? So that gauge would go down. We'd put your frame upside down. And what we're looking at, once we get it centered, is we're looking at how much angle is in the frame. And you can see it here, right? We're looking at gauging how much angle and trying to get it as even as we can. So if you think about that, you could use a piece of paper, the end of a book, to kind of something to give you that line. And your goal is to eyeball it to get as close as you can on both sides from the center of your frame. Now, as we're talking about our frames being tight or loose, tight is usually the case where these temples feel like they're really pressing on the sides of my head. So we can do two things. One, we can heat up the temple and then pull it out just a bit. And what I'm doing is right after the hinge, so here's the hinge, after the hinge, I'm putting some pressure with my thumb pushing in. Then I'm using my fingers here going farther down and I'm pulling out. So I can heat it up, do that, and what it will do is the metal wire inside, this plastic acetate, will get loose or malleable. The metal wire inside will hold true to where we leave it, and then as it cools, it will widen out the frame. So that's one way to do it. Another way would be with face form. We can eliminate a little bit of face form. So as you can see, I press in the center, opening it up, or we can add a bit more. So if we go with the first thing we talked about, we're going to go into the hot water, get the temple nice and warm there. And sometimes, actually in this case, the temple's so long, it would be easier to fold it and put it in this way. Now we know we have the whole lens in there. It's perfectly fine. The lens is okay in that warm water or hot water. I would say you leave a frame in there for about 20 or 30 seconds. Nothing's going to fall apart or get damaged. What we're looking to do is get it nice and warm. Once it's nice and warm, we pull it out. Try not to make a mess everywhere. And now I'll hold my thumb here. Again, pushing in just a bit. Fingers out here, pulling out. I'm going to open this up just a bit. And that looks like a crazy bend, but as you can see, it kind of resets itself. So though you're coming out so many millimeters, it actually doesn't come out as far as you'd like. And now we've widened that side a bit. And we can do that on both sides to widen out a frame. Now we can also do that to lessen or bring it in on a loose frame. We'd be pushing out here, bringing in. So I'm using these fingers to push in, and it's almost curving right around my thumb here, right? And that's the goal, get it to come in a bit. Once I hold it there, and now you can see that curvature is now coming in, and that will help tighten the frame. So we've loosened it, we've tightened it to bring it in. The next part, we talked about that face form again. We could put half the frame in there. It's going just above, right? It's almost 3/4 of the frame where the water's at here. And what we really want is we want that bridge, that center, right in between the two lenses. We want that to warm up for us. As it warms up, we'll pull the glasses out. Again, I would say you'd leave it in there for about 20 to 30 seconds. And here it'll allow me to press in the center using my fingers to pull out. Now I'm going a bit far there, but once I let it go, it's going to come back in. And now I've opened the frame. And then I can do the opposite to close the frame. I can push on the inside. I'm using my fingers here to pull back. Again, not an it looks a bit excessive there, but when I let it go, you can see it kind of set itself, right? So now it's not as flat as it was, and this will help tighten my temples a bit. That's on a plastic frame. On a metal frame, a lot of that is similar, only you don't necessarily, we'll use this guy right here, you don't necessarily have to heat anything. So I can open it up just a hair, right? And in a metal frame, you do it a lot less because it's going to hold true very early. The same thing with this temple. I can either, holding onto the hinge, I can bring the temple out just a hair and in just a hair. Keep in mind that your frames are fragile, right? But these are adjustment points. As long as you're giving it little by little pressure, and once you feel that resistance, you're holding at that resistance point, then you can wait and see how much you get. Put the glasses on, see how it feels, wear them for a little while, take them off. Now, when you go to an optician, they kind of know the feel, right? They've worked with hundreds, if not thousands of frames. They know exactly those pressure points, and they can get you suited pretty quickly. On your end, it's a first pair you're doing this with. So it might take a couple of times of just manipulating one temple or another to get it just right. But feel free to give us a call. I have no problem walking you through it, kind of helping you out with it, or seeing what other solutions we have. Again, plastic frames, metal frames, but if you have a plastic frame, that cup of hot water is a really big help. But thank you for tuning in.